Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Knights of the Storm. This is episode 189 on 15 August 2026. Getting kind of excited. We're approaching our 200th episode and our 4-year anniversary, which are going to be a week apart. So expect some special stuff coming up when that happens. Anyway, today we're going to be talking a little bit about this new mRNA flu shot that's been rushed through and approved. For those 50 plus years old, 50 to 65, I believe it is. Denver's going to be enlightening on that, us on that. And he has some other information to drop, kind of ties it all together. But first, let me introduce my co-hosts, of course, the lovely Lady of Liberty, Miss Karen Carpenter, and her new show, Surreal Surroundings, is awesome. It's getting rave reviews. So how are you doing, Karen?
Thank you. I'm doing great. I'm in the countdown to my birthday, which is a personal countdown. It's funny how we get programmed into that when we're little kids, like, oh, my birthday's coming.
That's right.
And then you often suffer after birthday letdown. But anyway, and happy birthday to Don Jeffries coming up this week. Tony Ty had a birthday just recently. A lot of August birthdays. Happy birthday to all the Leos and Virgos. We're heading into Virgo territory. And thanks to everybody who's been tuning into my show. And I'm really looking forward to my guests. My show will be tomorrow night. Monday night this week. Only this week it'll be on Monday. So sorry about the wonky days, but I'm getting my feet.
So you're normally going to be on Tuesdays, but
Tuesdays at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. But Monday, it's at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. And it's Dr. Juliet Engel, who I think she's just going to be fabulous. I'm so looking forward to that.
Oh, I am too. And then we have Ashley, Miss Think, Change, Repeat herself. She keeps us sane in an insane world, running 2 shows now of her own. Did an excellent co-hosting on America Unplugged today. I thought that was one of the better shows they've done in a long time. Not saying anything bad about them, but it was just a great show. So tell us about how you're doing and your new shows.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just been, staying busy. I've been really, really busy and it's been good. So just continuing to work and figure out my show and Fool Me Twice. So we just covered Bond last night and we have some fun stuff in store. So just keeping on.
Yeah, I loved the Bond thing. Was absolutely awesome last night. I was tired, but I stayed up for it and I stayed till the end because it was so fascinating. And then our special guest host today, I call him guest host because he's been on the show many times. He's been on other people's shows. He goes on with TNP sometimes, the New Prisoners, on various shows. And he's been in the Foxhole with me. Mr. Denver Attaway, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing a lot better than I was, man. In part due to the fabulous guest you guys had last week, Dr. LaGuardia. I began eating kimchi this week, and my acid reflux has entirely disappeared.
Right on.
Shout out to him and his advice because it's directly benefited my life just since I saw that episode last week. But yeah,
check out his Substack, Denver. Check out his Substack.
Yeah, me too. With my high
Medical
blood pressure.
Underground.
But,
yeah, they had me on medication that almost killed me. And when they adjusted the dosage, and I'm not on any medication now just because I followed, his book. Well, hell, I'll plug it since we're here. Got it right here. Doomsday Book of Medicine. You can see my bookmark over the hypertension portion of it. But his book explains to you what the conditions, what causes the conditions. So you kind of understand what's going on. And then there's several different things you could do. So you can kind of, whatever fits best for you, you can try it out. It's all natural. Yeah, check it out. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into your topics. You wanted to talk about this mRNA shot, or do you want to start somewhere else, Denver?
We can discuss it. I have listened to a few different takes on it, and I think the best one I can point people to is Ryan Christian's Last American Vagabond. He doesn't go too deep into it, but he did point out how out of Harvard, there's a group of doctors who are supporting and attacking people that are just recognizing the faults of the mRNA technology as they roll out, and not mRNA technology, but the shot itself, and how it was like 70 something percent adverse reaction. I mean, really just out of control reactions to where this should have never been approved. And you have people in the ivory tower over at Harvard pushing it along. I think that's really shocking.
Can I ask you a question real quick, Denver? Because this is something I haven't really dug that deep into, and I know you have. When they listed the percentage of adverse reactions to the COVID shot, right? That mRNA, the first one that was ever released or approved, they judged that, or they weighed that against another actual vaccine, not a real placebo.
That's
so
right.
That brought the numbers down. Now this flu shot, and I haven't seen the numbers, so I'm hoping you can enlighten me on it. Did they actually judge this against a placebo, and is that why the numbers are higher?
I could not say one way or the other. I really haven't done my due diligence on that topic enough to give you a good answer. But looking at the history of vaccines, I mean, has there ever been a fair placebo? To where they're actually doing the work that would show whether these things are being fairly tested against, say, a glass of water, and I don't think they have.
No, well, the people who produce it and sell it are the ones who conduct the studies. So
Yeah.
that tells you all you need to know. Not saying that medicine's not beneficial. I just don't think that we get the right answer on the risks. So informed consent is what we're talking about. And I find it interesting because I was kind of looking into this shot as well, not as deeply as you have, but they apparently conducted all the way up to phase 3 trials. Now that typically took 10 years, 8 to 10 years in the past. So we just went from the first mRNA shot ever being approved, first under emergency use authorization, and then later fully approved. It hasn't been 10 years, and we have a new one out now that's going to be an annual. So that kind of concerns me, especially for the target demographic that they're trying to give this to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the highest risk demographic. And generally, I'm not that I've verified this, but I would expect for any of the drugs or vaccines that are going through whatever process they're set to go through, they're probably testing them on younger, healthier people as to minimize the possible side effects. That's generally how drug development goes. They want to avoid things like black swans and negative PR. So if you can homogenize your test population, even though most of these drugs historically are used on older demographics, well, it's kind of, you're getting off on the wrong foot from the get-go as far as connecting proper medications to the correct target market and demographics and things of that nature. That's a common problem.
And I can actually understand that from the standpoint of comorbidities and stuff like that. So if you're testing this stuff out on, like I said, their target demographic for this new mRNA flu shot is 50 to 65 years old, which is an interesting number when you draw Social Security. So I might get into that later, and the myocarditis risk that comes along with it. But yeah, you don't want your numbers to be skewed off because there was another event that you can't necessarily rule out that it was the test vaccine or it was this other event. So, and I'd like to get Karen's thought on that. I know Karen's into the medicine, medication and health stuff as well. What are your thoughts?
Don't take it. That's my thought. Don't take it.
Simply put.
I have deeply researched, and I haven't looked into this particular vaccine, but I don't feel the need to because I've researched so many vaccines that I know that unless something has drastically changed, which I don't believe that it has, that in order to actually find out the testing, the so-called testing or the study procedures, you need to print the insert off of the website, the CDC website, FDA website. It's going to be 30, 40 pages, and it will be encoded, encrypted, and jargonized. So you have to read it very, very carefully to decode, decipher, and sleuth out if there was a placebo, what they're calling a placebo. Usually it's an adjuvant. Often it's a previous flu shot, for example. Or so they'll try one shot, one say HPV shot, Gardasil shot against the next Gardasil shot. And they'll say, oh, there were only 2 adverse reactions in the more in the test group compared to the control group, but they gave the control group the old vaccine and they're giving a new version to the test group, and they may have, they're going to probably have similar numbers of adverse reactions in both groups, but they don't have to say how many. Well, they will say how many they actually have, but you really have to look carefully to find that information. But they'll say there were only a very small percent of excess events or whatever added events with the new one compared to the placebo. But it's not a placebo. It's an old vaccine. It's an adjuvant. It's the aluminum adjuvant, or it's some other toxic cocktail. So you really have to do a lot of detailed work to figure out what the trials actually consisted of. How long was the reporting period on some of the childhood vaccines? And I didn't believe this. RFK Jr. used to say some of the vaccines were tested for 2 weeks. Well, yeah, guess what? They actually were. They actually were. And if you look at the reporting period, they were monitored. The people who got these vaccines were monitored for 2 weeks. And then there was the option for parents or providers to report other things later. And then you would find those side effects in the long list of less common side effects. Those are things that got reported usually later on after the short actual official trial period. So there's a lot of sleight of hand and jargon and mincing of words, and you just really have to look into it to know these things. So I don't trust it. Of course, we know that we see the mass poisoning of our children, and the number of vaccines on the childhood schedule just keeps growing, along with the health problems that we see in our youth. We have the sickest kids in the world, and all of these processing problems, behavioral problems, all these labels we're putting on kids: speech delay, ADHD, motor problems, autoimmune diseases. Now you've got the metabolism, the metabolic dysfunction, and prediabetes in very young kids. And I think I attribute a lot of that to the Wi-Fi, swimming and Wi-Fi in school and daycares and homes all day also, and the food, of course. It's an attack from all angles, omnivore on us. But I see all of these vaccines that just the number keeps growing and growing. And of course, that's having an effect on the youngest members of our population, creating a customer at a young age. And then at the back end, of course, we know that there's a euthanasia or we've seen the age longevity dropping for several years now. It started dropping before COVID, the average lifespan in the United States, but it's declined significantly since COVID. So, or the whole COVID episode. So I know, and my mother's 88, and I know that I'm really worried about her being 88 during the whole COVID event, because she worked all of her life, and she's got a decent retirement. She's got my dad's retirement. He worked all of his life. I mean, they worked their butts off, and she's got a decent retirement. And so she is a target. There is a target on her because she's 88 and she's receiving what she actually earned or paid into, or was the social contract it held up for her. And no, she's not a boomer. She's the silent generation. And I don't think that most boomers actually are going to have that social contract hold up for them, even though they're taking all the flack lately. But the silent generation, the social contract did pay off for them, but they worked like crazy all of their lives. 2 or 3 jobs nonstop. My dad was a teacher. He'd go on summer break and he would work. He would do jobs on the side all during the school year. So they worked hard, but they got a decent retirement and a nice middle class house, and and so my mom's doing really well. So I did talk to her, and I feel my mom is injured by one COVID shot. Can I prove it? No. But to me, it's very evident to me that's what happened to her. But I talked to her the other night about this flu shot or any flu shot. And she said, no, I'm not getting any more flu shots. I quit going and I'm not going to get any more shots. So she's, luckily she sees that. So I truly hope that there will not be a lot of uptake on this vaccine and that people are starting to think about that. And I don't know what we can do for those people who are still drinking the Kool-Aid and buying that this is for their own good and want to get that 20% off Walgreens the day they get their flu shot for free, those things. I hope that there aren't too many people that will fall for that, because of course it's there's an agenda behind it. And we know that there's a depopulation agenda 2030. We know all of that. So I see this as part of that agenda. And I just say my bottom line is don't take it and try to help the ones you love avoid it.
I will just disclaimer this by saying this is not medical advice.
No, it is not. This is all my personal opinion.
I will, before we go to Ashley, I do have 2 points to make real quick on the testing that you mentioned, Karen. Number one is when we talk about mRNA and we talk about the risk of myocarditis, right? It's up new studies show it's up 670% now, and it increases with each booster, right? So that's talking about the COVID shot. And those are peer-reviewed studies that are out. Children's Health Defense reported on it, but they're not the only ones. I know people don't go to that source. But the other thing is they tell you, and this is where the flu shot comes in. They tell you that getting COVID can cause myocarditis itself, and getting the shot to prevent COVID gives you less of a percentage of having that happen. Now, have you ever heard of someone getting myocarditis from the flu? No. So now you're invoking a risk, I don't care how small it is, that doesn't exist if you just get sick and, suffer through it. And even with the COVID stuff, why would you intentionally give yourself a risk when you maybe you won't catch COVID? Like you live rural like I do, and you don't really associate around a lot of people. What's the chances of me actually getting sick from it? I don't know. I guess everyone has to weigh it for themselves. And with that, I'm going to throw it over to Ashley. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been mulling this over since, we've talked about it since I knew that our episode was coming up. And I'm kind of at the place where I don't know what else to say about it, because if you still trust the institution, and that is your right to do so. And I know that there are people that love their doctors, and I know that there is a place for for example, in the medical establishment as we see today, like if you have an emergency, that's going to probably be your best bet. If you have a severe cut or something like that, there is a place there for it. And I don't know. I feel kind of weird on where I'm at with all this stuff, just in my own personal perspective, because I think that people just have to use their discernment. And I wish that people would, at the very least, before making decisions to accept whatever these things are, just do some critical thinking about what does that actually mean for myself. So I know where I'm at. I know where we're at here. And I feel like a lot of us at some point were more trusting of the establishment as a whole. And, we all had our own individual journey. I think some people don't get there. Some people have been woken up a bit by feeling like they had people in their lives that were injured from the mRNA injection originally, and even some people that I know in my own life that were pretty trusting of that. I think it caused them to pause and ask some questions. So I believe that's a benefit. I think what I really want for people is to have critical thinking about the process and how this information is, presented to us, and whatever we're going to do about it. I think that, again, I know where I'm at with it, and I know that, like last week when we had our conversation with Dr. LaGuardia, the GLP-1 inhibitors was kind of a hot topic because he believes in that. And maybe there is a cost benefit analysis. So I'm trying to move away from just thinking that like I should tell people that I know best for them. And I'm not accusing anyone here of doing that. I'm just saying, like, in my own thinking, I'm kind of at this place where it's like, you know what? I hope that you're making the right decisions for yourself. I hope that you do. I think a lot of these things are concerning. I think that what we know and what we have just talked about here, as far as the placebo or like the actual testing, what does that actually involve? All of these things I think are important, but I want people to go on their own journey to make the decision that's right for them. And I think too, whenever we're talking about cult-like behavior, many of us grew up just accepting that, yeah, you should get a flu shot. Like, it's not, we didn't have these associations that it was harmful, or certainly like when I was in school and I got a flu shot, I didn't think about all of the other things that we're discussing now that are actually in the injections, right? And we all have our own journey to get to where we're at. And I just hope that people look into that. The other thing is that on my show that I did on Think, Change, Repeat with Sean about a pharmaceutical insider, he works in that, not specifically in that area, but we did talk about the actual, what is the process supposed to be as far as the stages of testing, and what did this look like with the mRNA? It was not how it usually is done. So I don't know, this is something that I've been mulling over. Does that mean that maybe other medications such as GLP-1, maybe it did go through the test? I haven't done a deep dive specifically on that. Like, maybe it did have a more thorough testing, but these injections did not go through that rigorous testing. But I know all of us know that. So it's a weird place for me to be, because it's like, yeah, I have all of these concerns myself, but trying to pair that with and I know I'm taking this in like a socio-political direction as opposed to like just the medical, the straight dope, but I feel weird these days because I find myself trying to like, oh, well, I'm not falling for this division narrative. And then trying to figure out, like, is there a well-placed moment to plant a seed? And if there is, how to do that tactfully and try to maintain your relationships and try not to go too far, which is always a concern for me anyway. Even if I'm just hanging out with somebody, not talking about any of this, I'm like, did I overdo it? Maybe I did. So all that to say is that this is such a weird subject and has gotten so much weirder since our COVID times that I know where I'm at, and I am saying that I don't even know how to approach this if it comes up anymore, because it's such a strange dynamic as far as the social element to our modern day medicine.
Can I follow up with what Ashley's saying, please?
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's true. And I'm not by any means saying don't go to the doctor. Our medical system actually, it works pretty well for trauma. It works well for some things. If you're bleeding to death, if you're having a heart attack, if you've been in a car accident, what else are you going to do? If you're broken, and then of course you have to be vigilant. You need an advocate. You need to be aware, but I think a lot of the problem that we have is we've handed over our control and our own responsibility for our health in so many ways, and we're just flying blind, or a lot of us are, or we're taught to trust the experts, and we really need to be more responsible for our own choices and information. So when I see the medical system, and I mean, they've saved me a few times. I've been in some bad situations physically, and I've actually been helped. But I've also had to help myself and make choices and be aware and refuse help in certain ways and find somebody. That's also part of this, finding a healthcare provider, and it's getting harder and harder to do, that is open-minded and will listen to you and consider your choices, your possibilities, your own preferences, or even just be a problem solver. The medical profession, and Doc talked about this, Doc LaGuardia, in either my interview with him or the one we had on COTS just recently, that it used to be that the medical profession was it was a problem solving. It was detective work. It was using your knowledge, your training, available resources, and problem solving, taking the clues, listening carefully to the patient, trying things, going with your own intuition, the rapport you have with the patient. And we're seeing all of that disappearing this week. My daughter's having a pregnancy, and it's been a lot of involvement with the medical system, and that included dropping samples off at a lab this week for her. There were no humans involved. We couldn't get a hold of the lab to talk to somebody. How does my mom do this for me? How, can someone else drop this off for me? It was all automated. There was nothing we could do. I found a lab that was open. I had to check in with a kiosk as her trying to do it. I didn't have her insurance card and nobody wanted to help me. The one person in the lab was behind a glass window. I had to stand there and say, hello, is there anybody here? I need some help, please. And they're like, oh, well, you don't have her insurance card. Well, no. It's like, it was just so incredibly frustrating that the human factor was gone, and any connection or problem solving or ability to ask questions and problem solve together is being taken out of the equation. So I think that it's an even more incumbent upon us to be responsible for our healthcare, to try to find those providers that will work with us. And yes, I keep my mouth shut around most people. I plant seeds. I knew my mom was fairly receptive to talking about flu shots and things. And so I said, it's about time for the flu shot this year. Are you going to get a flu shot? She said, no flu shots. I quit going for shots and I'm not going to take it. So thank goodness. And those are seeds that I've planted and other people have planted over the years. And she's come to that herself, but it took several years and several shots, so we're all on a separate journey, and we have to allow each other grace and do what we can, but we have to also let people make their own mistakes and choices. And I'm not, there are some very good things about medicine and about science, and science is never settled, and we've moved away from all of the traditions and the herbs and the knowledge that has been found and shared and nurtured and developed over our history, over millennia, and we're moving away from that. And so I think we just have to try to hang on to that. And I'm with you, Ashley. I'm not a purist by any means. There are times when we need to take advantage of what's available, Thanks for letting me talk about that.
Well, I would say I look at it this way. If you're going to get hurt, you can't breathe, you're going to go to the hospital. Billy Ray has talked about this before. America Unplugged, Gorilla Underground. Shout out to Billy. When you need medical attention, you're going to go there. But the same way that we do our own taxes, right? I'm not a CPA. I get boned on my taxes every year, right? But I could go get educated on that stuff if I wanted to and figure out all those tax breaks that the rich get, right? We could do the same thing with medical, where we could do our own research and then make those educated decisions for yourself and your family of, I want to do this procedure or that procedure, or know that there's even another option. Trust is gone. Trust is gone with the medical community over COVID. And that's why they came up with the Rebuild Trust campaign with the RFK stuff. Let's rebuild trust. Well, how did you lose the trust in the first place? But anyway, unless Ashley or Karen wants to add on to that, I want to hop back to Denver. I don't want to take all his time up. So
really quick, I want to say that those are a lot of great points, Karen. And I think that's the thing that where I would even talk about these days is finding, that middle ground for yourself and the conversations to have good faith conversations with people that you're concerned about and that are open to hearing it. And then planting those seeds where we can, but also, really putting that responsibility on the people that are making these decisions for themselves and like appreciating that that's the decision that they want to make and they think that it's the best decision for themselves. And hoping too that eventually people will perhaps ask questions about processes that there's not a lot of clarity. So if they did become interested in how do the the trials work with the placebo, what actually does that mean in this case? Has language been manipulated from this situation to this situation? Have definitions changed? What does that mean for me? So just asking these questions, looking at the evolution of how did people used to have healthcare, what did these relationships, because this is something that we talk about all the time, the fact that there's been a mass centralization from like local family community doctors, a doctor that had their own private practice, and now they're bought up by St. Joe's or Cone or Atrium or whatever that looks like. So there's been a change. So hoping that people will ask those questions, why? And then of course, the other question is cui bono, who benefits, and looking at the excess administration costs that have gone into healthcare, the insurance, and just looking at the people that have an interest in keeping things how they are or changing things to be how they have become. I think these are valuable questions to ask, while I don't want to tell people what to do for their own health, because I think that they do need to have an interest in that themselves and do the work, because it's a lot of work to try to figure this stuff out. And if you earn it by being interested in advocating for yourself, then I think you get more out of it. And so it's a weird time as far as that goes, but very good points, guys. Good points, Karen. And I'm done now.
Thank you. I think about this all the time. LTO said she doesn't preach, she plants seeds. Yeah, I learned that, and I'm glad I learned that early on. And I see seeds sprouting in my family, and people give each other my phone number now. I've heard that this works for that. Does anybody? And call Karen. So that's a really cool feeling, because for so many years I thought, wow, nobody's paying any attention to me. Why am I doing this? This is all falling on deaf ears, and people actually ask my advice now. So, and that's a huge responsibility, and I take it very seriously. And I always say, this is my opinion and it's based on my research, and I'm be glad to send you materials and links and things, but this is what you might want to try or whatever. So, it's really important to keep an open mind and respect that people are on their own journey, and things are changing very, very quickly. So if you have a provider that you trust and that will listen to you and honor you, hang on to that provider. And I wish I did. I don't. We were talking about this in the chat in somebody else's stream. A lot of us don't have a provider at this point and can't find one that we trust or that we even want to work with. I have a great biological dentist, but I don't have a doctor, and I wouldn't know where to go for somebody that I would trust at this point. There are a few naturopaths around town, but they're just so busy. So yeah, it's a hard place to be. So the better we can take care of ourselves, the better off we are going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Preventative. That's why I like Dr. LaGuardia. He looks at preventing stuff. So let's jump back over to Denver. He's going to drop us some facts. We just talked about how you got to do your own research, and where's your level of trust, and make the decisions hopefully with informed consent for you and your family. So Denver's going to drop us all the research he's done on all this stuff, and I think we're going to get into some other interesting topics. So over to you, Denver.
Yeah, just what you guys just touched on. There's a lot of implicit trust that we are being asked to just give them. Karen, your example with the labs, you just want to ask somebody a question and you're literally walled off from being able to do so. It's similar to like a black box, right? The just trust me, bro, black box. You just give us what we ask for and we'll give you the perfect solution, right? But anyway, the topic I am starting with today, it's something that I was touching on in our first episode of Get Fact Up with Yona. We started with the question, can big tech read our thoughts? Can it take a non-invasive approach, an invasive approach? Is this currently happening? Let me present so you guys can see what I'm seeing here. But yeah,
I don't see your screen there.
I'm getting ready to present real quick. Give me a break.
I'll make sure I'm not dropping the ball here, brother.
No, it's all good.
I will pull this up while we're waiting, though. Yeah, you just started this. Where is it at? Oh my goodness! Now I'm missing my screen. All right. Yeah, you just did a show with Yona. Is this going to be a weekly thing? The get fact
Yeah.
up?
Yeah, Get Fact Up. It's going to be a weekly show. We start at 9:00 Eastern on Thursday nights, and we'll just be doing some research deep dives on various topics, and wanted to revisit some of the stuff that I was touching on in that show because I didn't get a chance to really demonstrate the full message that I really intended on getting out on a lot of these articles. So to respond to that question, can they read our thoughts? Are y'all looking at my screen? The wireless brain sensors revolutionizing neuroscience and healthcare.
I'm looking for it.
No, I mean,
there it is.
Yeah.
Ashley beat me to it, and I should have done it. There we go.
Okay, so this is just like a market outlook, right, by a market research firm called Delve Insights that I felt like put together a really nice summary of all these things. To get this full report I was looking for a price point. I couldn't find one, but I can guarantee you it's probably over $1,000. Like, this is the type of information that market researchers and trading houses and investment funds are looking at. So whether they think they can read our brains or not, they're certainly measuring. So just to start at the top here, wireless brain sensors are emerging as a transformative technology in neuroscience and healthcare, offering a new level of precision, comfort, real-time monitoring for patients and neurological conditions. Unlike traditional wired sensors that limit mobility and can cause discomfort, wireless brain sensors are advanced microelectronics, biocompatible materials, wireless communication systems to capture and transmit neural data, including brain electrical activity, intracranial pressure, temperature, blood flow dynamics, various biomarkers they mention there. And we'll get into how they really extrapolate a lot of meaning from those things. Leaning in on pattern recognition and things of that nature. So these sensors play a critical role in diagnosing and managing disorders, as well as support research in brainwave sensor applications, brain-computer interfaces, wireless mind reading technology, and so forth. The integration with artificial intelligence and Internet of Things further enhances their potential, enabling remote monitoring, predictive analytics, personalized treatment strategies. Their lightweight wireless design improves patient compliance in long-term studies and outpatient care, making them valuable for both clinical applications and neurological research. As demand for non-invasive, patient-friendly, and data-rich monitoring tools grow, wireless brain sensors are set to revolutionize neuroscience and healthcare by bridging the gap between cutting-edge technology and human brain health. So just to do a quick rundown how brain sensors work from signals to insight. This is the different technology they have. The neural mesh interface, latest generation includes neural mesh interface that penetrates brain tissues to record individual neuron impulses and deep brain activity. Wireless transmission via Bluetooth, that's a Microsoft technology, you guys. Low energy or FRID technology enables seamless communication with smartphones, tablets, dedicated receivers, which is something I was harping on all the way back in 2021. Now, they're probably doing something with data coming from people who took the jabs. At least a possibility to consider. The wireless connectivity eliminates infection risks associated with, all right, so signal detection, advanced sensors, continuous monitoring, brain parameters, including intracranial pressure, pH levels, so on. That's your biomarkers that represent the fundamental communication patterns between neurons, providing real-time insights into neural function and dysfunction, whether they extrapolate them or not. So different types of signals, your EEG, that's the electrical impulses generated by neurons, are captured when electrodes and microelectrodes detect voltage changes in the scalp or directly inside the brain. Local field potentials, electrical signals that reflect activity of a group of neurons. Action potentials, these are your spikes. These are brief, high-frequency electrical signals. Brainwave patterns, chemical signals, hemodynamic signals, and so forth. So I found this really interesting where it gets into the role of each of the frequency ranges. So your delta, that's predominant during sleep, associated with restorative processes. Theta, strongly linked to memory consolidation, spatial navigation, creative thinking. Alpha, strongly linked to memory consolidation also, spatial navigation, creative thinking, enhanced during REM sleep and meditative stress. And beta and gamma, this is where the Owen Benjamin definitions don't track. So beta associated with active focused thinking and voluntary motor control. High beta activity correlates with anxiety and stress, while moderate beta supports problem solving, decision making, conscious cognitive processing, and everyday activities. And gamma, the hated gamma by Owen Benjamin, those are the fastest brain waves linked to high level cognitive function, including conscious awareness, the binding of sensory information, complex problem solving. Gamma synchronization enables integration of distributed neural processes into coherent perceptual experiences. So gamma would be the ability to take very complex information and communicate it to other people in a way that they can understand. So when it comes to brain sensors, you've got your non-invasive versus invasive, which I already mentioned. And let's see, application use neurological disorders. So, yeah, a lot of it's for medical reasons. They just want to help us, right? This isn't the corporate state just trying to read our brains to know exactly what we're going to do in predictive analytics and all that. No, they just want to help people in the hospital. Understand? And this is your market projection going forward, compounded annualized growth of about 9%. Was anticipated from 2024 to 2032. So it's going to roughly double in size. Key factors driving this growth include rising prevalence of neurological and cognitive disorders, such as stroke, epilepsy, traumatic brain injuries, and the increasing demand for continuous remote brain monitoring, advancements in miniaturized and wearable sensor technology, and the growing adoption of non-invasive wireless solutions to monitor, analyze, and moderate neural activity. And here it gives you some details on those drivers. So from a solutions perspective, they segment the market into wireless EEG sensors, wireless MEG sensors using monitoring cortical activity, cognitive workload, neurological disorder research, wearable semi-invasive neural sensors, and wireless sensor platforms in software. That's the real interesting one right there. And market drivers include continuous remote neurological monitoring, advancements in AI and neural signal processing, rising prevalence of neurological and cognitive disorders. Can't imagine what would be driving that. And minimally invasive and wearable solutions, integrations with therapeutic and assistive devices. Market restraints, I'd like to think one of those would be regulatory and ethical challenges, because non-invasive and semi-invasive wireless neural devices must meet stringent safety, data handling, and clinical efficacy standards. Keep that in mind. Yeah, they list regulation as a constraint. And the future of wireless sensors in neuroscience, multimodal integration. So let's take a quick look at the multimodal integration. Do y'all see my screen? I just pulled up the multimodal integration of fMRI and EEG.
Yeah, we got you.
All
We
right.
got you, Denver.
So here it retouches on the two major invasive brain mapping techniques, two of which we looked at there. It's the EEG and the functional magnetic resonance imaging. This is research from January of 2010. And essentially, they have been recording these measurements for analysis. When you read this stuff, I think the EEG data overall sensors are averaged with respect to event timing, that's calculating event potentials. So they're taking all these measurements, they're looking at the spikes, they're looking at everything else, and they're trying to make reasonable deterministic judgments out of them. Let's see. fMRIs are analyzed with Brain Voyager. Pre-processing steps include interslice time correlation, motion correction, linear detrending. So all these different layers of analysis and adjustment. Let's skip on down here. I think figure 2 really says a lot more than I can. So you take a look at, all right, the results here. We identified 5 MRI networks: your visual, your core, your ventral attention network, your dorsal attention network, and your somatomotor network. And what they did was they mapped all these, and then they drew an average. So is there anything to be gained, like when the average is pretty much non-representative of any single one of the measurements? It's like, yeah, let's just average them all. It's basically here down at the bottom 2 are the best. It's just like a flat line, which I found kind of funny. The spatiotemporal analysis of the 5 networks consistently found across subjects which spatially overlap with the dorsal attention, ventral attention, the core, the visual and sensory motor networks. The average time courses are normalized because they refer to the average activity of the brain patterns. The thick red line in each group represents the hemodynamic response function, best to fit all data points. So yeah, they just average it all, and then it like represents no single one of them. So I found that kind of interesting. But that's what that multimodal mention here is. The future lies in combining complementary sensor modalities, EEG and temporal dynamics, MEG for spatial precision, and selective invasive recording for high resolution local activity. This hybrid approach will provide an unprecedented insight into brain function across multiple scales simultaneously. And that's what that multimodal integration was all about, was being able to combine these 2 different data sets all the way back in 2010 to come up with this new approach. So they have complementary advantages with regard to their spatial and temporal resolution, and the recent hardware and software developments have made it feasible to acquire EEG and fMRI data simultaneously, And the fusion of the high temporal resolution of EEG and the high spatial resolution of fMRI could be a promising way to investigate neuronal activation. And let's pull up the definition for neuronal activation real quick, shall we? Let's see what they give us. Neuronal activation. Let's get some definitions here. What is neuronal activation? AI tells us has two primary meanings: an internet meme about sudden basic excitement, or a biological or artificial process of a nerve cell firing. Neural activation refers to the firing of electrical and chemical signals between neurons and the biological brain, or the mathematical function that calculates a node's output in the artificial neural network. It drives everything from human thought and physical movement to machine learning computations.
Are you talking about, real quick, I hate to interrupt, but you're almost talking into the realm of actual mind control, and then not through subversion and, power of suggestion and stuff like that, literally beaming thoughts into your head. Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Not necessarily. I think they can prompt, like, think about marketing, or think about showing somebody an ad with the water droplets going off of the crisp lettuce when they drop the hearty sandwich down on the commercial, and it's got, all the meat and all that and the lettuce. They're trying to make your brain synapse fire, so you can be like, I want a fucking burger. Right?
Well, this makes sense. This makes sense because when you talk about say a power of suggestion or something, let's just say that I'm walking down the candy aisle of the grocery store, they could put out the smell of like chocolate or something that makes me crave chocolate, to do that impulsory buy.
Drive by a Burger King.
Burger. Yeah,
you'll smell the flame broil flavor that they pump out. Well,
so they've been able to do that artificially with people. With those little hats they put on with all the little nodes on there, they can actually make you think you smell something. So that's why I was asking if you were going there with it. Are they going to be able to control us? Or is this more of a want to read our thoughts to build our digital twin?
At this point, I think it's more of just data to feed LLMs and to feed the blockchain. In my opinion, like I said, I'm just an educated man on the street. I'm not an expert in this field. I'm just somebody who's interested in it, read about it, and can offer my opinion on it. But what I wanted to title this episode, how data centers, your blockchain data footprint, will include brain scans, LLMs, and AI agents as black boxes, and Israeli tech all relate to one another. And we've been looking at the wireless brain sensor revolutionizing neuroscience and healthcare. Next, we're going to look at an article titled "How Big Tech Wants to Harvest Your Thoughts." Okay. So
let's let the ladies jump in and offer thoughts before we.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Karen, you want to go first?
Well, I'm sitting at a desk and I have a couple of shelves of books, and I just was reaching up to try to get The Invisible Rainbow, the book about the history of the electrification of the earth and its effects over time as each technology was added, the effects on our health and the side effects, etc. And there are definite effects as each level of technology has been added and the electrification of the atmosphere has increased. And then and Jason and I did a show about that. It's one of the early shows I did with COTS, and I made a huge presentation. I think I had 40 or 50 slides, and and went all through the electric, the Invisible Rainbow book. And then Sherry in chat was saying she's EMF sensitive, and it's too bad because I know a lot of people are, and more people will become EMF sensitive and don't realize that all the insomnia, the headaches, etc., may have something to do with that. And most of us can't eliminate the EMFs completely, but we can mitigate them to some degree. So it's important to perhaps ground yourself and do those types of things, or look into mitigation techniques. There are things you can do in your house. Building biologist, you can have a quiet room, hardwire your internet, your wife, those types of things. All of those things I've looked into extensively. So if anybody has questions, I think I can point you to some resources. Barry Trower is a professor in the UK, or a scientist in the UK, who's done a lot of work on EMFs and tries to help people mitigate it or cope with it. And my first appearance on Don Jeffries' show was he was looking for people who were EMF sensitive, and I cannot tolerate wireless earbuds. I used some for a week and I felt like I was dying. And I thought, I asked my friend, why do I feel so terrible this week? And I thought, you know what? My wired earbuds went out, and I've been using these wireless ones, and I feel like I'm going to die. So I went on Don's show and talked about that. So, I mean, it is a real thing. The EMF sensitivity is a problem. But as far as what the technologies Denver is talking about, 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about the potential or the desire to advertise in people's dreams. And of course, Noah, Yuval Harari at the World Economic Forum says we're hackable animals and our thoughts are not our own. And then we've talked about extensively the different types of luminals and the way graphene oxide is used in growing plants and things, and how all of that is so trackable and traceable. The pills that you swallow that are trackable and can be followed throughout your body. And then there's the patent that we talked about extensively. I think it's 0202666 or something along those lines, to mine cryptocurrency using the energy from our bodies. So I don't think all of these things are so fantastical. It's always been hard for me to imagine nanobots and nanotechnology, but I do think that it does exist. I don't know how on earth it's being manufactured. It's beyond my comprehension how that could be done, but it seems to be being done. So I think that this is entirely possible. And we've got transhumanists, these massive transhumanists that have infiltrated or sponsored so many people that we're well aware of. Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance was nurtured or groomed by Peter Thiel and the transhumanist types. You've got going back, you had the Technocracy magazine, which Elon Musk's family is linked in with the technocrats from Canada. His grandparents or parents were technocrats, and I think they were exiled from Canada and went to South Africa. So this is something that the agenda has been there for a long time. I have a friend who has the old Technocracy magazines. Her uncle used to get them, and she has them all. And that was, I don't know, from the 20s or 30s. So, this is, and I have an original copy that was my uncle's, of Bertrand Russell's, The Impact of Science on Society. And these types of, I have it behind me. And so, it didn't fall on my head, but, so we know all of this agenda is well in play. And then my guest on Monday, Juliet Engel, I was just listening to a podcast with her, and she said when she was in the MK Ultra program, they were all hoping, and they had a playbook written out to 2010, and they were pinning their hopes on AI and on controlling people with AI. And I think that this type of integrated technology would be a pie in the sky for them, that in order for AI to basically babysit us or turn us into these automatons or the Walking Dead or the Stepford Wives, or however you want to look at that. You've got to have a certain amount of certain materials in our bodies, and we've seen what's coming from the sky, what's the ingredients in some of these, the graphene, which is in so many things now. So if we're semiconductors, and of course we're electrical beings anyway, healing is voltage. We've talked about this with Dr. LaGuardia, the need to ground, the importance of water, and the composition of our water, and why are we so sensitive to these EMFs? Why are we being inundated with EMFs at stronger and stronger and stronger frequencies, or higher and higher oscillation rates, etc.? Why is this happening? And frequency is everything. Everything is in motion. Everything is at a frequency. Words are frequency. Color is frequency. Sound is free. It's all part of the electromagnetic scale, or a spectrum. So it makes sense to me that this is where we're heading. It seems very sci-fi, and it's hard to reconcile. And then to me, it just goes back also to the spiritual battle. It's a battle for the human soul, or for the divine, or for all that is of God, or of the divine. And this is all inorganic. And so to me, it all makes sense if you look at it in that context.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. I think how data centers tie in, when you look at how the world is traditionally operated in the tech age of binary code, of just either on or off, in that multimodal integration of fMRI and EEG data, they're talking about how they map that stuff on a S-curve or a sigmoid, and they're mapping values from 0 to 1, which is obviously exponentially more complex, requires more compute, more data, more storage space if they're storing that stuff, and really ties into the whole quantum realm, which overlaps very, very nicely with electromagnetism. But that being said, from here, we're going to look at how big tech wants to harvest your thoughts, and just make a few mentions of this as it relates to the ongoing presentation. Researchers have used a sophisticated laser system to monitor brain activity through the mouse's skull, identifying exactly which neurons are firing when it was looking at projected images. We can see the neurons that are encoding the visual stimulus. Yutzi explains, they've cracked the neuronal code. Used a second holographic laser to project a series of points inside the mouse's brain, each point activating the very same neurons that represented vertical or horizontal moving bars. Okay, without getting too much in the weeds there. Over the past 2 decades, researchers using functional magnetic resonance, the fMRI that we mentioned, which tracks the iron in the hemoglobin supplying oxygen to neurons, have been building up increasingly detailed maps and inventories of the mammalian cortex. The name of that journal was actually Brain Topography. So yeah, I can give you, they're literally mapping the brain, topography being a big function in mapping. Thanks to the huge advances in machine learning, or a black box, in other words, computer algorithms that are able to sort through enormous amounts of information and use statistical models to make classifications and predictions, fMRI scans can now be used to identify everything from depressive thoughts to nuanced feelings of envy and schadenfreude. Other algorithms have been able to accurately piece together reconstructions of movie clips watched by subjects just by analyzing their brain scans, or have detected in probing the brain activity of swing voters in the US presidential election, responding to the photographs and videos of presidential candidates, which candidates provoked anxiety or even disgust, and which elicited positive responses or feelings of empathy. Kind of interesting. The more invasive the recording equipment, the richer and more detailed the data. Surgical interventions are at the vanguard of neurosciences and remain very rare. Fewer than 100 people on the planet have brain-computer interfaces, they claim, embedded beneath their skulls, yet almost inevitably a concerted trickle-down effect is occurring. In 2023, a team at the University of Texas demonstrated that they could use fMRI to translate brain scans into words and sentences after subjects listened for 16 hours of storytelling podcasts. When the subjects then listened to a new podcast, the algorithm was able to convert the gist of what was heard as it manifested in their brains into words, phrases, sentences that roughly captured the stories. One of the guys who worked on it, Alex Huth, he was like, "Oh my God, this is terrifying." Now invasive wearable brain scanners are beginning to proliferate beyond the lab, making their way into our workplaces. And I know on AM Wake Up, on GTW, they had played a sound clip of a future dystopian setting where a woman in an office is under constant monitoring, and it detects that, you know, she's got some kind of crush on one of her co-workers and how her focus and all that was going down. So yay, that's the trajectory, you guys. Like an extra 30 grand a year just to think. They want to mine the brains in ponderably vast reams of data on brain activity to be delivered. So let's see, the last bit I wanted to mention here is how this is already being used. Analyzing 30 of the most prominent companies currently in the market, they found that all but one had unlimited access to consumer brain data. 2/3 could share it with third parties, and 2 implied they were already selling it to third parties. Okay. So moving on from there.
Let me pause you there. This is scary stuff. And we're talking in the chat right now. I'm talking with Radio Sack, talking about EMF detection. EMF detection, and we talked about EMF. Karen did a great presentation on that, like she said, probably almost 2 years ago, year and a half, something ago. But EMF is also, you have EM fields around even copper wires. So it's out there. And one of the big pushes for the Army of 2030 that they talked about when I was still in was they wanted to work on their EMF detection. And part of the chat here, we're talking about, yeah, they could, you know, I think that personally they're working on EMF detection devices to detect incoming little drone swarms or whatever further out, as a precaution, you know, a deterrent or a mitigation against that. But at the same time, what if I'm not wanting to go to the 15-minute city should that ever happen, and I'm in a no-go zone using a handheld GPS? They want to be able to detect that too. And if you go one step further with what you're talking about, can they detect your brain signal? Can they get that sensitive? I know that's kind of wild to think about. And I actually want to ask Ashley about it because she hasn't chimed in here in a second. So, yeah, what do you think about all this stuff, Ashley?
I mean, I think it's been said. It's horrifying. Karen said, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was thinking the same thing. And I was like, Black Mirror. If you guys have watched Black Mirror or seen summaries or know about it, this is the kind of stuff that is in that show. And of course, there's so many other elements from sci-fi, futuristic films and TV that we've seen. So I find that part of it very interesting and not in a good way.
Yeah, it's certainly a brave new world.
Yeah.
But from that last one of how they want to scrape, big tech wants to mine your brain for inputs.
Yeah.
Well, an article published on the same day, also on Wired, is titled "McDonald's built a 515-page dossier on me." It says I'll never stop eating there.
Well, really, Denver, before you get into that really quick, I had a couple other things I wanted to throw in, but yes, that is really, I don't know, it's really crazy, but there's also like Minority Report, pre-crime.
Oh yeah.
You know,
predictive analytics.
Yes.
But they're extrapolating the point I didn't really voice was that a lot of the meaning that they're taking from these brain scans is extrapolated from pattern recognition and what determinative judgments they reach as to what it means. It's not, they are recording. The next link we'll look at the details of how they're decoding what the brain says. And still it's being extrapolated from earlier patterns that were set. And, every brain is different. It's not as if you can take, brain patterns of 33 or 50 people or 100,000 people and say that it represents one single person, as we saw in those earlier maps, where they're applying a weighted average algorithm and all this stuff to essentially flatline the brain activity and say that's the average brain activity right there, even though it in no way corresponds to any single one when you isolate one of them,
Yeah. And I think part of this too is like a weaponized algorithm. And this is one of the problems with them having so much access to your data. Like, not only everything online, what you click, what you buy, what you watch, how long your eyes hover over a particular visual. Do you share it? Do you not share it? Do you respond with an angry emoji or things like that? But then add in the other surveillance from our cell phones, as well as smart TVs, flock cameras, the other surveillance, data that they have, your purchases that you make with, like online, everything going through your bank account, all that stuff. And I wanted to say though, that like Karen had brought up, the fact that the technocracy, the idea of that is quite old. And a lot of this stuff goes back quite some time. So this is many years ago when I was working in printing, and I went to a school, like a mini class at Clemson University, and they have their own printing program there. And this was probably like early 2010. They were already 3D printing their own USB drives, like the students, and they were kind of early in that kind of thing. But they also had, this sticks out to me, they had their own little shopping center set up as a part of the school. And what they were doing, they talked about analyzing, and we know many studies have been done on this, but they had like actual like visuals that were monitoring where people's eyes went as far as looking at the aisle. And I know a lot of us, know about that. It's kind of old, but it is interesting to me that, like, yes, we're kind of getting to this peak at this point, but this has been in the works for so very long. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is Elon Musk's brain implants. Obviously, we started hearing about that many years ago and have gotten like a little bit of a trickle of information as far as the people who are users of that. And of course, there is some PR spin surrounding the benefit of that to people, as far as who, people that have been paralyzed or quadriplegic, paraplegic, whatever. The other thing is the bull experiment from Jose Delgado in 1963. And that was where he was able to change the behavior of an angry, charging bull through this implant that he and his team had installed into the bull. So that's one of the things that I kind of think about whenever I am trying to temper my own fear of what we're seeing, is like, look, this has been in the works for a very, very long time. We can do what we can do and have awareness as much as we can, but I just try to tell myself to not get too scared, even though it feels like we're rapidly approaching living in an episode of Black Mirror and the robot dogs are going to come and robot you.
Yeah. Well, if McDonald's is building 515-page dossiers on people who have, just over a year and a half of phone data, would you say that contributes to the demand for data centers? Would you say that contributes to the demand for large language model agents? I'd say you're probably going to be safe in assuming it does, because think of the amount of data and dedicated computational resources just devoted to a guy going to freaking McDonald's, man. And that's one person. Now multiply that times just the Fortune 500 companies and 350 million Americans. You're starting to see how those data centers are being rolled out and why. It's part of a digital It's the whole digital twin dynamic, right? Let's see here. If I'm back on screen, the blockchain-based, decentralized, fair, authenticated information sharing scheme and zero trust Internet of Things. So this paper wasn't available, but I'm going to read the abstract real quick. The Internet of Things are increasingly operating in the zero trust environments where any devices and systems may be compromised and hence untrusted. In addition, data collected by and sent from IoT devices may be shared with and processed by edge computing devices. In order to reduce the reliance on centralized cloud servers, leading to further security and privacy issues. To cope with these challenges, the paper proposes an innovative blockchain-enabled information sharing solution in zero trust context to guarantee anonymity yet entity authentication, data privacy yet data trustworthiness, having your cake and eating it too, and participant simulation yet fairness. The new solution is to be able to support filtering of fabricated information through smart contracts, effective voting, consensus mechanisms. So your digital twin is being built, right? Your digital twin is on the blockchain. That's where your digital twin is. It is a dynamic thing, and it is updated probably 1,000 times every day. And it is about predictive programming. That much I'm certain of.
Let me pop in here. So we hear about the fourth industrial revolution, right? The new industry, we don't build cars anymore. We don't do what we used to do that made this country great. Everybody's into the data now. They want to data mine. They want to collect it. They want to predict. A lot of it's for advertising. We know that. I was talking in the chat about, there was a story I read a couple years ago about Google. They keep track of everything you do. And well, he's talking about Google as a whole is huge. It's YouTube, it's Google, it's all this stuff. So they have all this data on you. Try getting banned from YouTube and find out how much it affects your entire internet. It's horrible. But anyway, they had a plan to put, they got these digital screens up in the supermarkets, stores and stuff like that. There are digital displays. Well, Google was trying to sell a service where they would tie in with facial recognition your search history, so that as you say walked by one of these screens, it would target advertise you. Yeah. And that actually didn't go over well because somebody's wife doesn't know what their husband's searching on the internet. So you might get some bad advertisements up there and then get the same guy. So that's literally why they kind of pulled the plug on that. But I could see them wanting that data for that purpose.
And I'm sure they're still getting it. They're just not. They're not prompting all of it to show up in the form.
Well, we do see it. We do see it right now. My wife I forget what it was. It was just a week ago. I bought something online on my computer, not even on my phone or anything, on my computer. And then she immediately got a pop-up ad for the same type of thing on her Facebook. And this has happened multiple times. We've talked about it before. This has happened. A friend of ours was looking at wedding dresses for her sister's wedding or something like that. Right before she came over to our house, says, "Hey, let me get your Wi-Fi password," so she could save her data. And next thing you know, on my Facebook, I get ads for wedding dresses. And I was looking up sheds, and she got an ad for a shed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy. That is the new fourth industrial revolution. The industry is data collection, data storage, processing, AI. There's a ton of different ways they can use it. But anyway, I'll shut up now. I've gone on too long.
Yeah. Can I have a turn?
Yeah, absolutely. Jump on in.
Thanks. There's so many things in my mind. I'm afraid I'm going to forget most of them if we keep moving on. We're changing from topic to topic so quickly. This is kind of a big summation, really, of so many issues that we've.
That's right. That's what it's intended as.
Really, it's about the hour of the time or whatever. First of all, EMFs. Yes, it's a spectrum. It depends on the frequency and your exposure, your sensitivity, and other conditions going on. So it's not. Yeah, EMF is not evil. We are electrical. We have to. That's what light is. Sound is. So it's the frequency, the use, the intensity, the exposure time, etc. So there are a lot of variables, but the levels and uses we have now are not natural. Our bodies are not well equipped to handle all of this, and we do adjust over time, but it also has a lot of impact on us. So, and some of us more than others. Also, we were talking in the chat about phones and where you carry them. If you carry your phone in your pocket and you're a male, you're radiating your nuggies, as we call them in my house, and you are damaging your sperm count and quality and the DNA in the sperm. So please don't carry your phones in your pockets, or use your laptop on your lap if you plan on having children. And if you're a mom or a prospective mom or an expecting mom, do not put your laptop on your tummy or near your tummy or your phone. And for heaven, and there is quite a bit of evidence that points to the concern over ultrasounds, that being a cumulative problem issue. The EMF exposure of the mother during pregnancy also may impact the child. And I'm not saying don't get an ultrasound. I'm saying personally what I think is, it's a tool. It's not a toy. It's not a vanity thing. My opinion, you shouldn't be having high def ultrasound when you're so many months pregnant in order to have a nice picture of your child to compare it to after they're born, because that is radiation, and there may be an impact on that child. So I hope people will take that into consideration. And as far as the twins go, the digital twin and the data, yes, the new gold or currency or product is data. And I think that that's part of why we see and then the new thing to harvest is data. And so that's part of why we see the data centers, the connectivity everywhere. And my guest on Monday, Julia Engel, I was listening to an interview, and she was talking about how she can hear the subliminal advertising because she went through MK Ultra. And so she can't listen to the television at all because the advertisers, the television stations buy advertising, subliminal advertising by the second. They pay by the second for subliminal advertising, and she can hear it. So she can't listen to television. So we are having these things constantly barraged upon us. So not only are we being harvested with data, but these tools are also being used to, we are receptive. We send and receive. And so we are also receiving, and any connectivity that we're highly empathic and electrical. And so we send and receive. There's a heart field, and some of us are clairvoyant or clairaudient or clairsentient. We have these unseen abilities in the unseen realm. And when James Salcedo talks about all these phenomenon all the time, and most of us have had some sort of incident that we don't truly understand. So I think there's so much beyond what meets the eye, and that we're kind of taught over time to rule all that out, poo-poo it all, only go by what you can see, taste, feel, your five senses. And so I think all of that plays into this, and it makes sense. So we're moving into that, more into that unseen realm, which so many people don't really understand or even truly choose to believe that that's what's happening. But was just one example about the digital twin. I listened to some other podcasts, and one of those involves Clyde Lewis listeners. Clyde Lewis has been very ill. He's been in the hospital for several months, and there are some people who have been his devoted friends and followers that are working on setting up an AI Clyde Lewis that will have an archive. You will be able to interact with Clyde Lewis after he's gone forever and ever, and you'll be able to talk to him, and you'll be able to see all of his episodes, all of his content with AI Clyde Lewis, and interact with AI Clyde Lewis. And also they're working on a 3D avatar, the holodeck, basically, with Clyde Lewis. So you can go visit the holodeck with Clyde Lewis and pick your favorite episode and interact. And hey, if you wear your meta glasses or whatever, you may even be able to meet your buddies there. I don't know, but to me, it's just unbelievably not okay and creepy. And I think the time is coming where we will all need to be We will need to decide, what are we going to do with our digital twin? Are we giving somebody the rights to our digital twin? I think you've got celebrity families now, or estates of people, and I'm going to say Michael Jackson as an example. I'm not sure if it's him. It may be Queen. I don't remember who it is, but there are some celebrities, I believe, that are having legal battles over the right to somebody's digital image or hologram and material, and the right to do a show with that digital twin, so to speak. So I think the time is coming where I know my sister-in-law is a florist, and she deals with a lot of funerals. She says that there are chips now, QR codes or chips in headstones that you can use your phone, and you can see pictures and videos of the person in the grave from a chip in the headstone or a QR code in the headstone. I mean, and that doesn't surprise me at all, but is that where we want to be? I mean, I'm thinking of Star Wars and the lightsabers and the Luke, I am your father, holograms, and of course, if you just look back at science fiction, Star Trek and or even movies, Metropolis, going way back. I mean, this has always been, in the plan, or
Yeah.
that it has been. So those are just some points I wanted to make from the chat.
Well, think about the business of like a funeral home. They're looking
Right.
for any way to add value to what it is that they offer. So they're like, yeah, let's
Or
give
something
people
to
that.
sell, if you want to
Yeah.
call selling adding value. Make more money.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. They're like, I mean, the cost of my uncle's funeral that just happened was $15,000, right? So they're like, well, we could make it $16,000 and give you this cool feature. So whether people are thinking about what and participants in this dynamic, whatever their individual compartmentalized goal, it's all feeding this same thing. But just for a quick actual definition of digital twin, real quick, from a paper titled Empowering Digital Twins with Blockchain. This was published in 2020 in Advances in Computers. The digital twin is an exact digital, local, cyber, virtual representation replica of any tangible physical system or process. And the digital twin runs on a competent IT infrastructure like cloud centers. In essence, the digital twin is typically a software program that takes various real-world data about a ground-level physical system as prospective inputs and produces useful outputs in the form of insights. The outputs generally are the value-adding and decision-enabling predictions and simulations of how that physical system will act upon those inputs. These help in quickly and easily realizing highly optimized and organized products with less cost. Just to tie it back to what we're talking about here, we're talking about digital twins being intertwined in the blockchain. Internet of Things, and the way they talk about this, it's like, with all of this incredible technological sophistication exists, of course we need to like just be stepping over privacy and ignoring it, because we got to gather all this data because we can. The Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big and streaming data analytics, data lakes, software-defined cloud environments, blockchain. The concept of cyber physical systems. As it relates to all of these things, we're going to jump to this cybersecurity expert,
Can I
Gentiala. Yeah, go ahead.
Drop something real quick before we shift gears here? This is kind of important. When my dad passed away, he lived in St. Louis, and I was here at Fort Leonard Wood, which is only a couple hours away from where he lived. And we went there, and we had to basically hack into his computer to get to all of the stuff, because he didn't leave a will. We didn't know what bank accounts he had, his stock stuff, none of that stuff. We didn't know. So at that time, and this was, I want to say it was around 2016 or so. At that time, I was looking into it, and they already had an issue with your digital footprint that you leave behind when you pass on. And this is a big problem right now, that what do you do with that information? You're talking bank accounts, you're talking your stock portfolios, all the stuff that we all access online now because everyone's gone paperless, right? I still receive paper. I refuse to do paperless if I can refuse it, because I need to get a piece of paper in the mail to remind me. I'm not going to go check my email every day to see if I owe a bill or something, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at is I remember my brother, he was the executor of my dad's estate, and that was a humongous burden on him. Now let's take a look at a digital twin, if that becomes a burden on people that have to manage that once someone passes on. It's something to really think about, a whole different can of worms to open. And it kind of ties into what you were talking about, storing all our stuff, building a digital twin. That's going to be burdensome to somebody someday. And it's going to, it sucked when my dad passed away. I still hurt today.
Yeah.
It'll drag it out, drag it out longer. So
absolutely. The way I'm thinking about the digital twin in this sense, as it's going to be something that your physical, your physical person in reality, whether if you're where you're expected to be, where you're supposed to be, are you doing everything you're anticipated to be doing? And if you step outside of that routine, little warning flags and stuff like that, if you step outside of your geo-fenced area, your digital twin is going to be what's alerting the man, whoever you want to characterize it as, that you're not in compliance. That's kind of where I see it going. But to take it from there, this Israeli startup is claiming they can use AI to diagnose brain disorders in 15 minutes. And just to give you an idea of who these guys are, one of these guys, let's see, the name of the company is Hemispheric, and the co-founder, CEO, is a guy named Hagai Lalazar, and a computational neuroscientist and chief technology officer, Giddy Litwin, a computer vision expert who helped develop Apple's Face ID and led hand tracking work for Vision Pro, founded this company. And what they've done is, all right, that gives the market that they're looking at. All right, here from the Times of Israel on August 5th, they're talking about their system named Descartes, which will be able to decipher the electrical activity of the human brain to help diagnose neurological and psychological conditions, such as depression and PTSD. Like that other article said, in 15 minutes is their claim, which I don't agree with, but this ties back to the earlier research of all the brain imaging and the fMRIs and how they're building a database of that stuff. Well, that's what these guys did over the last 7 years in secret without telling anybody other than the people that they were measuring. Let's get to the details here. Over the past 7 years, we built the world's largest lab network for collecting brain activity data non-invasively from 100,000 paid volunteers at sites across Asia, Israel, and Boston. Hemispheric's Descartes AI platform was fed and trained on more than 250,000 hours of electroencephalogram brain data from participants, taking 6 billion parameters, which I'm sure have no flaw to them whatsoever. All 6 billion are perfect, or variables, into account, the startup said. For more than 100 years, EEG, which directly monitors electrical brain activity from the brain using small electrodes, has been the most common device to detect the brain's neuronal activity. But the method has been shown to have spatial limits and shortcomings in terms of capturing and translating results. The challenge has always been variability. The same brain signal can look completely different across individuals, said Litwin. At a very large scale, it becomes something you can model, making it possible to measure brain function accurately and use it in real-world settings without surgery. Let's see, there's one more bit here. This is a doctor who's like, with advancements in AI at the front wave of tremendous change, Dr. Lev, who heads the neurology department at a university, says, I think hemispheric is still at an early phase and has a long way to go. Although their numbers are big, they need to examine people at different ages, different cultures, different genders, etc. Because if you're building a model, the model needs to be representative. And this is my own opinion. The model needs to be representative of wherever it's going to be deployed. You can't take, let's see, back to that other one. You can't take data from one group of people and apply it to others and think it's going to be adequate, right? So here, in this last paragraph here, the company has presented its system to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration Center for Devices and Radiological Health. It plans to submit its results from a PTSD clinical trial to the agency as early as next year. It's also conducted a pilot study of 122 Israeli combat veterans who served in Gaza to assess PTSD. Because I'm sure those 122 Israeli combat veterans who have been slaughtering women and children in Gaza will be a great way to assess PTSD. That applies to everybody else, you know? So that's where we are on that. And continuing to go forward.
Hey, can I chime in really quick before you move forward, Denver?
Yeah,
I just
sure.
wanted to say that I find this to be very interesting. And I also think that obviously it's dangerous. But another thing that this made me think of is that if they are like, how much expertise would be assigned to these people, like, oh, we detected depression in you, or we detected anxiety or something else going on. And
it's not dependent on human expertise. This is all going to be automated through the blockchain and whatever models have been built. That's where the expertise would all be front loaded, and all of this is going to be automated.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that this is an inherent problem with the medical information that they would probably even be using for this, because the contributions to anxiety and depression are not one size fits all.
That's
just
right.
Like
That's
what
right.
you were talking about earlier, right? So sometimes this can be like, oh, I'm a new mother. I'm experiencing maybe postpartum depression, and maybe that is an estrogen overload, and maybe that is related to your gut health. And then in other cases, maybe it's simply like, I'm not sleeping. I'm very busy right now. I don't have time to get everything done. And I feel terrible from my lack of sleep. Sometimes it's a grieving process. Sometimes it's a relationship issue. Like sometimes it's a lack of vitamin D, magnesium, vitamin B, like these very basic things. So all that to say is that I will never trust something like this, because as much data and information as they have put in here, they're still not going to be able to accurately analyze the actual cause of the issue. And maybe they don't care.
They don't. That would be my position, is that they're building a system for the sake of building a system that they see utility in using however they want to use.
Yeah.
Whether it's a cause where they're acting on good faith, or it's a cause that they're looking to weaponize something. And, you know, just in this context, think about what we're witnessing in terms of the orders ICE receives and is acting on, or how police are acting on flock camera data and unquestioning what they're being told. Right. They are like nodes. They're like nodes on a motherboard, just carrying out a function that they're receiving from an interconnected data feed, you know?
Yes. And at a smaller level too, like in our actual environment right now, I actually see the mass prescription of an SSRI as kind of like that. This one size fits all approach to an issue, but we also have these other complicating factors as far as who's making money, who's benefiting from this, and what are the side effects that people don't talk about, like maybe the fact that it's super difficult to get off of them, or perhaps it was never about serotonin chemical imbalance in the brain. And again, it never addresses the gut health factor, like all these things, but none of that matters. If you went into a doctor in most cases today and you said, I'm depressed, they would say less, fam. let me get you an SSRI. And
That's
that's it. That's the approach.
You know, Karen, I believe it was you that brought this up with Dr. LaGuardia last week, where you said doctors were troubleshooters. They were.
Well, that's what I would like. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I said that today earlier too, and that's what this goes back to, is the problem solving. We're complicated beings, and we're all, our bodies are not isolated. Symptoms are not isolated. We are an interactive system, and so you have to treat the whole being and your environment, your circumstances. You can't just do a one size fits all. And also, the Prozac, for example, was developed by the same people that developed LSD and shipped it to the United States in tons as part of the MK Ultra program, or the program to dumb us down and numb us out. The same people who are pushing fluoride at us, fluoride in the water. So the SSRIs or the Prozac, that is not been that. In my opinion, the genesis of Prozac and the SSRIs were not benevolent. They were to dumb us down and numb us out and make us easier to control. And so if you've got a doc in the box, so to speak, I mean, I've had issues with telehealth already, feeling that was too impersonal. But now if you look at the telehealth services available, which I have been doing, now you can get AI to prescribe for you. It's not even talking to a doctor online. And I've used those before, where you talk to a doctor online and they'll prescribe for you, but it's an actual doctor who verifies your birth date and et cetera, you know. But now you can get an AI online to prescribe for you. Amazon has an AI service to prescribe for you. So to me, it's absolutely not benevolent. And could it help some people who perhaps have a severe infection or something, can't get to a doctor, or whatever the case may be? I'm not saying it could never help anybody, but one size fits all doesn't work for most cases, because we're individuals and we all have individual physiologies and individual, variables.
And this goes back to the point that
variables.
Dr. LaGuardia
it's not a simple thing. Health is not simple about,
That's right.
Right.
It notes the importance.
A lifetime.
It notes the importance of the role of the doctor in anecdotal observation, rather than just taking, the often flawed results or flawed measurements. They don't listen to the patient. They're simply operating in a system that their neurons are primed to act a certain way, And
one of my pet peeves, and I talked with Algorithm about this on my show on Wednesday, is that's just anecdotal evidence. To me, that is just the biggest cop-out ever. Anecdotal is your experience. It's somebody's experience. We are the sum total of anecdotes.
The anecdotal, the anecdotal is what a good doctor does. A good doctor goes and questions his patient, listens to the responses, incorporates that into the standard of care and the modality of care that he's going to provide. He's not just relying on a universe of unpersonal data. Or data that
is an aggregation of anecdotal data. So anybody who says, "Oh, that's anecdotal," they don't understand. I don't feel they have a good handle on what they're actually saying. If you're going to discount somebody by saying that's anecdotal, that's one of my pet peeves.
Well, they've tried to change the definition to be like, "Oh, that's just what some guy is saying." That is apart from the system. That's kind of how the definition has been changed.
An anecdotal observation is the start of science.
That's right.
See something happen, and then you see it happen again. You're like, hey, maybe there's something here. Can I repeat this? And that's where science begins, right? But I wanted to go complete a thought here, going back to what Ashley said, like who's going to make these decisions, right? And I know it's going to be AI, right? But who writes the AI? Who codes it?
That's
now,
right.
Let's take a look at Dr. LaGuardia. He's been practicing for probably 40 years, 40 years, and he knows his patients. He knows their situation. He probably knows somewhat of their financial situation. Are there stressors there? Do they have marital problems? Do they have other issues so he's going to look at all these outside factors that he has been trained and got the experience to look for, to try to do the problem solving, as Karen alluded to, right? The problem solving. AI will not do that, because who provides the AI with their thinking capability? It's a coder. It's a geek wearing glasses like me, typing on a keyboard, that has no medical knowledge whatsoever. So, I had one clip here. I probably won't play it, but you were talking about AI prescribing the drugs, the telehealth, and AI can prescribe the drugs for you. They have a service now in where is it at? It's in freaking Cleveland. You can order your meds and they'll fly it by drone and drop it in your yard. So, like, that's completely irresponsible. If you have AI diagnosing you, not asking the right questions, and giving you something, and then it gets dropped off in your yard, that is absolutely irresponsible. I can see people getting really harmed, poisoned even. So
Yeah.
that's my thoughts on it. And that was all I had.
Well, yeah, those are all very real concerns. And again, I like to equate a lot of what we're being presented with are just black box technologies we are being asked to implicitly trust. They just work, as while at the same time we are being bombarded by a zero trust architecture, which is constantly taking all of our data, in breach of due process, in breach of, laws on the books as it relates to privacy. It's just quite the inversion that we're living through right now. So this article titled "Black Box Technologies Could, and I would suggest are, undermining confidence in scientific findings." Let's just take a quick look at this. Scientists are increasingly relying on powerful data sources and tools they often cannot fully understand, inspect, verify. State-of-the-art tools like artificial intelligence, satellite imagery, online data, digital sensors are revolutionizing the way scientists study the natural world, but such systems can function as scientific black boxes that increasingly challenge trust in science. The new study by an international team of scientists addresses the problems of reproducibility, trust, and the future of scientific research in an era where technologies can shape science and influence knowledge without being fully open to scrutiny. I mean, yeah, it's like, how do you progress science if the basic premises and how the results are arrived at are not transparent for people to work through themselves, to reproduce the results? Like, that is as anti-science as it gets. So these technologies can process enormous amounts of information, monitor biodiversity, threats across continents, and reveal patterns that would once have been out of reach. However, are often owned by private companies that intentionally limit access of information about how their systems operate and process data, guided by proprietary constraints and commercial aims. But yeah, without getting too much into this, it's definitely an issue where they are just ignoring the idea of privacy. And while we're being asked to totally trust them, they don't give us any trust. In fact, we have to constantly verify and re-verify and re-verify. And because I see we're in the last 8 minutes here, I want to jump to this article, which I think characterizes this well. Why your zero trust architecture is a mere mirage. And that title might be a bit misleading because this guy's actually arguing for just better zero trust architecture. And what zero trust architecture is characterized as is never trust, always verify, the emergence of which has heralded a definitive panacea for the porous boundaries of the cloud epoch, compelling enterprises to abandon implicit trust in favor of rigorous identity-centric scrutiny. On paper, the paradigm shift replaces the archaic castle and moat with a surgical context-aware shield. So the castle and moat architecture, see, that's where they're protecting assets on premises. But where we are today, they're like, well, the system's everywhere. and the systems has vulnerability everywhere. So we have to consider that enemies are already behind the gates. Therefore, all of you, we got to have your data, because one of you could be an enemy, or one of you could be somebody there to disrupt our operation. And so that's the foundation of what is happening with the flock cameras, what is happening with all of these different tools and sensors that we are witness to them rolling this stuff out. So just think about it in the context of what we see ICE doing. To diagnose, let's see, one must scrutinize the relationship between the policy decision point and the policy enforcement point. The PDP, the judge, I guess that'd be the AI in this sense, operating on what data feeds it's getting, or your digital twin compared to what data feeds your real world person is getting, acting as the true center of gravity for verification. The policy decision point, or the judge, is the local arbiter that receives access requests and orchestrates a cacophony of real-time signals, from identity providers to threat intelligence feeds, to render an authoritative verdict. The PEP, the bouncer, positioned at the resource boundary. The PEP intercepts every ingress attempt. It possesses no inherent intelligence. It merely executes the mandate of the PDP. Does that sound like ICE to you? It kind of sounds like ICE to me. I'm saying, just to draw a parallel there.
Let me throw something in there real quick. When you talk about AI being your judge, right?
Yeah.
Right now, if a judge makes a decision, it becomes precedent, right? But then another judge could disagree with that and rule a different way. How will AI handle that? If AI makes a decision, does that become the law of the land forever now? Because
I would imagine it'd be incorporated into some kind of weighted average, and how it acts on that data and in what context. It's variables between 1 and 0. We're not in the binary computing age anymore, right? Everything is being, it's having these variables applied to it to assign a variable somewhere in between, as to, the deterministic judgment that it makes.
Can I chime in really quick with something that is more predictive programming? In Back to the Future 2, there is a scene that many of you may remember. This is when they go literally back to the future, and they are trying to help Marty's son, who is already in jail for a crime that he has been framed for. And there's an exchange between Marty and Doc where Marty is looking at the newspaper and he's like, "What? He's already in jail?" And Doc's like, "Yeah, they got rid of lawyers. It's a lot faster now." So it's just small, tiny little things like that. But that is like this idea of moving towards a faster single judgment system and removing lawyers, because lawyers are what make the system a problem, when actually, if you have a good attorney, it's like the only thing that is standing between you to try to protect yourself. And that's an imperfect system, but if you have a good attorney, they can at very least try to hold the process accountable for what is being done and following proper procedure and things like that. And of course, that doesn't take into account like a huge amount of corruption that exists and things like that. But I'm just saying, like, just a tiny nugget of predictive programming, RE, faster judgment.
Yeah, or process efficiency. They're like, we want process efficiency where we don't have efficiency. Yeah, they'll kind of label it with vacuous language. So it's not actually saying, yeah, we're going to get rid of any checks and balances to where you might save yourself from the flame. And we're just going to go with a data footprint on the blockchain to decide whether if you're even deserving of a second thought. But yeah, so what this guy is ultimately arguing is just for a better zero trust system, evidenced here in his mathematical trust drift modeling. Trust is an ephemeral value that decays according to the rigorous mathematical function model of this trust drift using an exponential decay formula. So what this essentially represents is why they need to have all this rigorous verification. Like I already said, the reason we're seeing the flock and all this other stuff, it's because they don't trust us. Your Gmail account doesn't trust you. You're being asked to verify and re-verify and re-verify time and time again because you're implicitly in this model untrustworthy. So they just have to continually monitor you, survey you. You need to be under constant surveillance, measured by several sensors, and still then be asked to re-verify that you are who you are.
Real quick, before I know we're running out of time, but this is something you and I talked about before the show, Denver, on the phone. And that it's not necessarily about not trusting you, but it's about protecting you from being victimized by somebody that they gave your data to. Right. So
sure.
And we've talked about this many times about planned obsolescence. We've talked about 2 and 3 factor authentication and how annoying it is. What is the end result of all this? The end result is, oh, I can't get into my email no more because I don't have access to the backup email or blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, you're not just going to make new email accounts and all this other stuff. You know, let's just get a digital ID with biometrics. It'll solve all these problems that have been tossed before us, right? And even if you have an older computer like me, I just found out a registry hack that my computer stopped finally bugging me to update to Windows 11. But eventually it won't work because I can't update my browsers. My browser won't work on certain sites. It is planned obsolescence. It is annoyances. It is making it difficult to do what we've been trained is normal. Remember I said I go to paper, right? I still want paper. I don't want to do everything digitally if I can avoid it. I know Karen's on board with that as well, because then they get you. That's the trap. And then they make that so annoying that, you know what, you've got to do this real ID thing, or you got to do this ID.me or digital ID to get on the internet to protect you from the data we stole from you that got leaked to somebody else because they might steal your identity. So craziness.
Well, I think the important point to capstone this with is that everything we've been looking at here represents data gathering, and data gathering that is updated in real time, while at the same time they have made much of the functional internet completely AI automated. And what is it that large language models have to keep learning? They have to have human generated data. So think about it like this: by destroying the internet with a bunch of crawlers and bots and everything else, what would you think the output of that would be? Do you think that would increase the amount of sensors they're going to put out in the real world to gather primary data straight from humans, or decrease it? I'd say you're probably pretty safe in assuming that's going to drive the demand for wireless sensors everywhere in the world. All right, and that's my presentation for you guys.
Okay, I couldn't unmute myself there for a second for some reason. But all right, we'll go around the table. I do want to plug everybody, and the first plug I do want to make is Doc Spoiler. If you're in the Rumble chat, go check it out. I pinned his Discord. If you want to join the movie tonight, which is a Bond flick. What is it? It's Moonraker, right?
Yep.
That's funny. We used to call the girls in Japan that are kind of like permanent stuck in the 80s. I used to wear these platform shoes when I was there, and we called them Moonrakers. So just a funny thing. But anyway, this kind of went in a different direction, Denver. I know you didn't get to everything. If you want, since Karen is doing her show on Monday, maybe on Tuesday, I can go ahead and run a live foxhole, and we can cover the rest of what you have if you wanted to do that. It's up to you.
I'll join you.
Okay. Yeah, I had
I was
stuff
thinking
on.
about going live Tuesday too, but that's okay because you gave me your spot. So if you want it back, you take it on Tuesday.
No. I don't do that show on the regular. So you're doing yours on the regular. So that
Okay.
it's important to have a regular time slot. Anyway, so let me go ahead and go around the horn here. We'll start with Denver. I do have a screen share. You got your new show. We talked about it earlier. You can find a link to Peasants Podcast on the Knights of the Storm website, which has been updated, by the way, folks. I mentioned it on Karen's show. I think Karen mentioned it or I mentioned it, but we have Fool Me Twice listed there. We have Surreal Surroundings listed there, and we have Think, Change, Repeat listed there. So it is updated. And if you go roll down a little bit more, we got Yona down here. And you said, Denver, you're hosting that on Yona's channel and TNP. Is that correct?
That's right. On Mondays, we do Peasants Podcast, and on Thursdays we just started doing Get Fact Up. Fact being used as a transitive verb there for F dash dash dash. D. Yeah. So yeah. We'll be doing deep dives into various topics, and I was just kind of continuing with the topic that we had introduced on Thursday night with a little bit more detail than I managed to get to. But I think what I was able to present here today was a nice, coherent presentation. And if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat or anything like that. I'll be happy to field any questions.
All right. Well, let's jump over to Karen. Karen, you had a clip to play. And
Yeah, we
also
can share
plug
my
your show.
screen. Yes.
Yes. Let's see. Where are you at? I don't have your screen. Where's your screen at?
Let me see. Maybe you know what? I bet when I dropped all the books.
I was waiting for a cat appearance. I actually would have played this.
No, I have two cat. That one is on the bed, splayed out, and I don't know where the other one is. He was on the floor, but my cats are gigantic. But I think probably when I dropped my books right on top of my laptop, right on top of everything. Hopefully I clicked the share the audio there. I guess we'll find out. So my show is this week. It's Surreal Surroundings. I'm on YouTube at Surreal Surroundings 27 on YouTube. And when I'm chatting on YouTube lately, I'm using the Surreal Surroundings channel, and I have more subs there than I do on my old channel, which is pretty cool. And I really appreciate the people who have helped me get some subs. I've been very helpful with that. And my guest on this Monday, my usual time is Tuesday at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, but this week I have Dr. Juliet Engel, who is one of the first children who was sold into the MK Ultra family by 5 uncles who were intelligence assets who were at Nuremberg, who helped to bring the Nazis over to the United States and also disperse them into other countries, helped decide who went where as far as the Nazi scientists went. She was in the first class at Fort Point in San Francisco with Michael Aquino, she says, Anton LaVey, Phil Spector, and others. So she will be my guest on Monday. She's written 3 books, including Sparky, Surviving Sex Magic, which is an account written from the point of view of a 10-year-old of her experience in MK Ultra. She was sold to Vita Polakis of Laurel Canyon fame, if you're familiar with Dave McGowan's work, by her father when she was 6 years old. So I'm so looking forward to speaking with her on Monday. She's a shining light. She's just a warrior. You can just see the truth and the goodness emanate from her. She's 77 years old, and she really wants her experience to be shared. So I'm looking forward to seeing her on Monday. at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern on Surreal Surroundings here on Knights of the Storm channel. So this is a 3-minute clip that she from an interview she did in February, I believe it was, and she's talking about something that we were talking about earlier. So I'll play that, and hopefully I've got my audio working.
Too, and I'm just a puny human. But you're right. I shouldn't say that, because I have a human soul, and the thing that is feared by the entity that dislikes us so much is the power of the human soul. We were given this. We were blessed with a powerful connection to the divine. And you're right that what each one of us can do is you go into yourself and you align with the divine from inside yourself, and you start getting answers.
Is there any particular reason, in your opinion, why they're so afraid of it? Because it seems to be an all-out attack on it.
The human soul? Well, I mean, look what they did to me. I went in as a baby. I was brutalized. I'm still crippled from everything that was done to me. I have got massive problems. I mean, I practically had my nose removed because they were pulling blood out of my head. You can see the scar. It goes all the way down here. Multiple surgeries to correct that. And I'm still going. I mean, and it's purely soul driven. I think my body is exhausted, but my soul is, I instead of disconnecting me from the divine, it made me attach tighter. So the big difference between Anton LaVey, Michael Aquino, Phil Spector was there, another nightmare. They gave into it. They surrendered their souls. They gave up. I didn't. I got punished more, and it made me stronger. So that's what they fear, is that is our connection to the divine. And Kathy O'Brien I feel.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's what I wanted to share from Juliet Engel, who's my guest on Monday on Surreal Surroundings. And I hope to have her as a repeat guest, because she's just a wealth of information and wisdom and experience. And I think that's people who know me know my motto is guard your soul, guard your humanity. And clearly that's the crux of the matter here to her. And I think it also is the crux of the matter with our topics today. For this great episode, Denver. So thank you for all of your information, all the technical. You always do great with the technical things, and I appreciate that too. And great to see you, Ashley. Great to see everybody in chat. And thank you, Jason, for helping me along with this podcast endeavor. I'm learning as I go, and I am learning, but it's a lot to learn, and I'm baby steps. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Karen. I just want to respond real quick to the question that Tara put up. Can possibly be addressed partially with legislation, the whole digital twin thing. Here in Cali, we have a new complete data deletion law enforceable by fines. Well, where does that data begin and where does that data end? I mean, they could be deleting your temporary file, but all the data that the ISP has on you is more than that temporary file. And, as Julian Assange and Edward Snowden were able to show 2 decades at this point ago, was at the AT&T center, the ISP, they literally had a data, feed going. They had the primary data feed that was split off. So your intelligence agencies and all that had their own little office there getting the same data feed. I would suggest whatever legislation they pass about, they're going to delete your data, so, they're not monitoring it. I'd say that's largely irrelevant at this point, because it's all being incorporated into the data centers.
I'd like to caveat on that real quick from a personal experience, Denver. When I got out of the military, I was commo. Everyone knows I was commo in the Army for about 6 years. And I got out for about 5, stayed in Okinawa and worked at a cable company, which I was the IT guy for the internet. And we had our own email. So when you got internet with us, you got an email address. And so, running our own email server, I learned at that point, and I think this may be a post 9/11 thing. I'm not really sure if this is part of the Patriot Act or what, but if you go into your email and you delete an email and then you go delete your trash, that email by law has to be stored for so many years in case there's a crime involved. So even if your stuff is deleted, it's not really deleted. It's still somewhere out there, at least for a certain amount of time. So, and I know that personally for a fact because I worked in the field. And with that being said, I want to run to Ashley. Ashley, plug your stuff. Do you want to do the shout outs? And then we can go to Karen for her awesome closeout every week she does.
Sounds good to me. Yeah. So you can find all the stuff that I'm working on over on my Linktree page. I actually still need to add the Knights there, but yeah, Jason does have the stuff listed on the Knights website. And then I have a Linktree page which is just Linktree, Think, Change, Repeat. So it has the Fool Me Twice stuff that Sean and I have been working on. We just had a conversation last night with Doc Rock where we did a deep dive into License to Kill and View to a Kill because Doc is our movie guru. And we also are working on, we had our propaganda episode, our History of Human Sacrifice episode, which ended abruptly. I forgot to tell everybody that I was splitting the episode and it was a very abrupt end, but part 2 of that is forthcoming at some point. And we have some other stuff that we're working on, some fun stuff to get out there. So Linktree, Think, Change, Repeat. That's where you can find me. And yes, let me get to our chat attendees today. So everybody, thank you so much for chiming in. We had Yona Aniwodi, Tara Preda Wild, Karen Peterson, Providence Wins, Bronx Stomper, LT Oracle of Truth, Salcedo Paranormal, Skunk Hollow Rose Gardens, Big Ron, Ronnie Omelets, or maybe Omelette, Be My Valentine, Nostradamus, Doc Spoiler, Radio Sack, Guard Goldsmith, Nature Boy, Dave of the Third Rail, Sherry M2, Spirit of the Age, Sam Smuhaski, Robane or Robin Lee, Greg Talent, Bri Deb Mack, Do Not Obey, Anna, A Dingo Ate Me Baby, The Algorithm, TK2 Beyond, Tony Ty, Misfit 1904, which is Tom, and Ghost Art. And I think I had everybody, but if I didn't, my sincere apologies. I do try to keep up with that.
Right on. To you, Karen, for closeout and any final thoughts.
Okay. It's great to final thoughts. The Minnesota goodbye, as Deb would say. Thanks to so much to everybody for being here, for all the great work that so many of us are doing. It's a growing process, and I know I'm growing and learning a lot, and I truly appreciate the companionship and support, input, and knowledge, suggestions from all of our friends and viewers. And please remember to appreciate today, live in the more in the moment as much as you possibly can. Don't borrow trouble from tomorrow. You can't live in the future, and you can't live in yesterday. So appreciate today. Count your blessings, guard your soul, stay human, my friends. And with that, I will say have a great week and keep your sword sharp, keep your armor tight, and shine your light. Take care, everybody.